and get you there so you can do the same. When it comes to mobilizing, not organizing necessarily, but mobilizing in particular, you can't beat email. You get good open rates when you manage your list well. At LeadNow, we've asked our volunteers how they prefer to get notified of actions, and 92% said email. They love to get their information from email. It's next to free. You can get a huge bunch of people notified of something basically instantly, and there's high conversion when you're managing your list well. You can run it out of your bedroom with nothing more than what you're going to learn tonight. So it's effective, it's inexpensive, very powerful tool in your toolkit. When we talk about email, I'm going to cover a lot of ground tonight. I'm going to talk about how to write compelling emails, get the most mileage out of what you say in your emails. But email success starts with list management. So we're going to start there. A lot of times what I hear from people is, we don't have a list. We don't have a very big list yet, and that's totally fine. You can start from almost nothing here. So the first place to start with your list management is, where do people come in? How do they get to be on your email list? And there's a few places. So we've all seen the websites that have like opt-in to newsletters, get added to our mailing list. That's one obvious way. Social media ads and social media posts are a great way to recruit people, not only just posting online and saying, hey, join our list, but also following up with people who comment on your social media posts and inviting them to join the list that way, sharing that link with them. Petitions are a great way to get people involved in your email list. And LeadNow does a lot of this, where when you sign one of our petitions, it's a notification at the bottom that says, I'm going to get notified of further updates about this campaign and others like it. And then those people get signed in to our email list and are followed up with about those campaigns. Also, if you're in the NDP, which I think most of us here are, you will have access to Populous, which is the NDP's database. And the NDP collects email addresses. They have all of ours, and they ask us for money all the time. You have access to those email addresses. You can go into Populous and export the email addresses of every NDP supporter in your riding. So the party's done that work for you, and you absolutely can get it and use it for yourself. Another great source of email addresses after a campaign, follow up with the people who engage with your campaign and ask them for emails. There are going to be people who took signs. There's going to be people who said they were ones, they're going to support the campaign. Give them a call after the election, do a debrief, and invite them to get on your email list to sign up for that. Think of it as building that relationship further, which is what you're doing. You're building an opportunity for communication and for relationship building. Once you've got people in your list, I want to talk to you about something called segmenting. And not every email that you send is going to be meant for every single person on your list. Segmenting is targeting your emails to the right people. Most email platforms, like MailChimp is a very common and effective one, offer something called tags. Tags are just little labels you can attach to people in your list, to their records in your list. And you use those tags to track what actions they take and any valuable information about them so you can segment. You can learn a lot more than you think about someone from very simple things. So I'll give you an example. Let's say someone signs a petition from LeadNow calling on the Trudeau government to double the emissions reductions targets for the climate targets. So when they sign that petition, a few things. They care about that specific campaign. They want to double the emissions. You also know they probably care about climate change generally, which means you should probably let them know about other climate-related campaigns. You also know that they are currently active. They've taken an action right now, recently. And that's helpful because as your list grows, you may find later on there's people in your list who haven't taken any action for years. They're probably not your top audience. I could do a whole nother workshop on data management and tagging, but the top line takeaways are: categorize your tags, have a sense of those tags. Keep a spreadsheet of all of the tags you're going to use and when you use them. It gets very confusing very quickly if there's lots of people doing tagging, if there's lots of different tags in use. So if there's a nice central document that explains exactly when a tag is applied and why, then it'll be standardized and that will make the data valuable. At a minimum, the things you want to try and track are people who have donated, what actions they have taken, and what their areas of interest are, so that you can send emails to them about those things. You can send, as to follow up on our example, a climate change related campaign that you're kicking off. You can send an email about it starting out to all of your climate people and know you're going to see interest there for you. The value there is, there's a couple pieces of value. For one, of course, you're likely to get better outcomes, better conversion, more actions from people if you're sending them information that they care about. If you send a climate email to a climate voter, they're likely to take action on that. The flip side of that is that they are also finding more value out of your emails, and that makes them more likely to open other ones. They get that email from you and they're like, yeah, climate, that's what I signed up for. That's what I care about. This email is relevant to me. So they're much more interested in what you have to say. They have a better feeling about this relationship you're building, this communication you're having, because you're targeting to their interests. So it's valuable for both of you to do that. Some other audience and list building tips before we get to the emails themselves. I just told you how you get that value on both sides, and it's really important to keep in mind that you are offering value to them when you send them emails. They signed up for a reason. You want to give them that value. We are all familiar with certain political parties that may flood you with donation request after donation request, which is known as churn and burn. They get what they want. Eventually you get sick of it. You might unsubscribe, and then they try and recapture you later, get more money out of you. And you know what? People do that because it works. But it's not fun, it's not great, and it's not good long-term for your list health. You want to be offering value to people. And the reason people get involved in any of this stuff, especially politically, typically is the same reasons you got involved. You want to make a difference. You want to improve your community. You want to improve the world. You want to make things better for people and for your family and for your community and yourself. When you are campaigning, you're offering people that opportunity. So you want to give them that chance to be involved. That's the kind of value you want to offer. Also, you want to keep in mind that it is a conversation. You want to invite feedback and replies. There's lots of ways to do that. You can, I see my camera's a little off there. You can do surveys. You can host town halls. Literally just invite people to reply to the email. It's fine. There's real people on the other end. If you don't invite people to reply, some people may still reply, and they'll mostly be the ones with the complaint. People who are waiting for an invitation to reply will have nicer things to say. And it's great to periodically just invite them to just hit reply and get back to you and start that conversation and dialogue. Cool. So that's the list stuff. The emails themselves. The writing makes a difference. The way that you write your emails, it really does make a difference. There's lots of ways to write emails and lots of reasons to write emails, and they each have their own approaches. I notice a lot of community groups and politicians do like a newsletter style, with lots of like, here's what's happening, bing, 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 bing. And that seems to work for them. That's great. My experience is with email for campaigning. And for campaigning, we definitely find that one ask per email is almost always your best bet. You may make that same exact ask multiple times in the email, but you're just asking for one particular action, whether it's a donation, whether it's signing a petition, making a phone call. It's one ask. We have a template, which I'm going to walk you through, on how to write an effective email. Now, you can certainly vary from the template, and I do, but it's a good place to start when you're figuring out how to craft your email to make sure that it's effective. So a few things that I like to make sure we include. There is what we call the hook, which is something engaging, exciting, that sparks their interest and a desire to keep reading. We want to explain what the problem is and the opportunity we have to fix that problem. And then we have something called the reader-focused theory of change. You want to explain why whatever they're going to do can be part of that solution. And that's got to make sense to them. It's got to be clear right away why, oh yeah, if I click this button, if I make this call, then this is going to contribute to solving the problem. And then you're going to just ask them to do that exact thing. So that's the hook to get their attention, explain the problem, explain the opportunity to fix it, the reader-focused theory of change, why their action can fix it, and then ask them to do the action. And you want all that to happen in the first couple paragraphs. And the reason is, if you've managed your list well, a good chunk of your audience is already on board. They're ready to take action. So you want to get through all that right away, because there's a big subset of that audience who's ready to take action right away. Let's get it in there. Not everyone is going to be that. So what we usually do is we have that, few paragraphs where we lay out that hook, the problem, the opportunity, the theory of change, and the call to action. Put a big old button there. And then below that, we call it below the fold, we put some additional information. And this is where you persuade the people who are still on the fence. You want to offer facts, supporting information. You want to double down on the urgency of the moment and why their action right now can make a difference. Don't be afraid to use a deadline. People need a deadline. But this is where all that supporting information is. You can link other articles, news articles here, use citations, lay out your facts here. You didn't need to put any facts or extra stuff up at the top. You want to get right into the hook, the problem, the opportunity, the theory of change, and the action at the top. This bottom bit is where all those facts go, because the people who are still on the fence, this is where they're going to keep reading, and they're going to look to be persuaded here. Following all that additional information and the supporting information, we like to add what we call the movement story. And this connects it all to the big picture. This may call back to earlier iterations of the campaign. If we're talking about paid sick days, we may say like, wow, like last year we did this, we made 10,000 phone calls and we got all this to happen. You're part of this bigger picture. And this is the next bit. This is where we're taking the next step on that road, on that journey. And people want and maybe even need to feel like they're part of something bigger. So this is your chance to get inspiring and end on a high note and show them how they're part of this bigger movement. And then the last bit is the PS. And I'll tell you what, there's some percentage of the population, I don't remember the number offhand, but there are some percentage of people who literally only read the PS. They skim through the email and they just read the PS. So I always put a PS in, and it's just like a 1 or 2 sentence summary and then a closing link. That's our template for an effective email. And we find we get great conversions out of that. And it's a formula that works for us. There's lots of room in there to add your personal style. Certainly, if you have the opportunity to get personal, that's often very effective. But we have that template there as a way to get us started in the writing process. And another thing that we do, actually, I'll add this in, is we have one person write the email, and then we let someone else edit the email just to get a second set of input and opinion on how that email reads to someone who is not the writer. This is especially useful when you, I don't know if you've all been there, but I've certainly been there a bunch, where I'm writing something and then I'm not happy with it, so I rewrite it, and then I rewrite it, and then after a few tries of that, I'm just like, wow, I'm out of it. I can't tell you anymore what I'm even trying to say. And it's really good to just let someone else duck in and have their say on it. A few more tips on just managing your email writing as an EDA or as a writer for running your email campaigning. Pick a voice. I write my EDA's emails as me. They're signed in my name and in my voice. Certainly not the same voice I use for Twitter, for example. There is, I don't want to say professionalism necessarily, but it's a little calmer, and it's definitely directed at action. I'm communicating information clearly, getting to the point quickly, and explaining why I've sent this email right off the bat. When you are sending your emails, a very, very, very good open rate is about 30%. That's really, really, really good. 20% is quite solid too. Often you may even get less, especially at first. To increase your open rate, this comes down to your subject line. So at LeadNow, we do a lot of A/B testing, which is where we'll send a couple different subject lines and see which one performs better, getting more opens. If you have a lot of people on your list, you can do that. If you don't have a lot of people on your list, then you probably can't get enough data to make that assessment. That's okay. What makes a good subject line? There's a few things. One is something that triggers curiosity, where people will click on it and be like, oh, what does this mean? And you may have seen some really outlandish versions of that in your inbox. But what I also find is that things that work well for subject lines for marketing do not always translate well to political audiences, to campaign audiences. With marketing emails, they just want you in there to get the brand awareness, to see what thing they're selling. But for you, you're building a relationship. You are trying to get them to continue to open your emails going forward. So what we find works best is to be very clear. This is what's in the email. So you might see things like paid sick days, if it's a paid sick days campaign. One we find is quite popular is we'll just put like Doug Ford. And if it's about Doug Ford, that makes sense. And if people are like, Doug Ford, this is, all right, what is it? What's he done now? So it's, you know, it is very direct to the point. It's short, but it does convey what's going to be in the email. So I try and avoid those like really tricksy, you know, marketing subject lines that you see sometimes. You want to make your emails accessible. There are people who access their emails in a lot of different ways. A few good tips for this: if you are using graphics, be sure to include alt text, which will appear then if people have their graphics disabled because they can't access them. If you use links, which you almost always will, be sure to include at least one link that is not a hyperlinked set of words, but is just the link somewhere. And that is because if you are accessing it with a screen reader, they do not convey the link information, just the words that are linked. So you want to make sure you have at least one, what we call a naked link, that will be then conveyed to people using the screen reader so they can access it as well. Also on links, if you're going to use supporting links in your supporting information, you want to put links to other news articles. You want to make sure that those links open up into a new page. And if you do not do that and people are accessing their email in a browser, it's going to take them out of the email and they will be on this now news article page and you've lost them and they're much less likely to go back and finish the email. There's a thing called merge tags that I want to talk about for a sec. I don't know if you've ever heard the term merge tags before, but you've certainly received them when you open your email and you get an email from Jagmeet Singh and it says, "Dear Tim," like they didn't write that out each time. They just put in a little code called a merge tag. And all it does is pull information from the database and fill in the appropriate piece of information. So in that case, it would have been like, "Dear first name." And then it will know to pull the first name associated with you in your email account. So a platform like MailChimp can do this automatically. You just want to put those merge tags in, and they're good for personalization. The dear first name thing is like the most basic, obvious use of that, and it's worth doing. It definitely helps. But you can also use that in a subject line. We now will use that like, you know, Tim versus Doug Ford, for example. It's eye-catching to see your own name. You can use it to include information, other kinds of information as well, just to get that extra personalization in the email. So the feature is built into MailChimp and most other platforms. So definitely worth checking that out as well. Speaking of MailChimp, this is the recommendation I'm going to make. So we've used MailChimp at Etobicoke Lakeshore for the whole time that I've been involved. And it is free if you're below 2,000 emails sent in a day, which most of us will be, at least at first. And it's not very much. It's like $20 a month if you start to do more than 2,000 emails in a day. And if you're doing more than 2,000 emails in a day, you're going to be able to fundraise more than $20 a month. So it's very, very cost effective and it's quite powerful. It includes all the features that you need to send out good emails. You can build a template that allows you to have the information that you use all the time filled out in advance. And it also allows you to store that audience information with tags, with their first names and last names and all the extra information right inside of MailChimp, and to gather it directly into MailChimp. They have landing pages you can put right on your website that you can have people fill out the sign-up form. So you don't have to do a further data entry step. So I do recommend MailChimp. There are alternatives if you want to look into other ways of doing it. You could do, there's one called Action Network, which is also free only for progressives, which I kind of like. They are specifically for progressives, whereas MailChimp is not. Nation Builder is one that people do use. It's more comprehensive. There's more to it than just the email function, but email is a big part of it. I like Nation Builder for what it can do. It is kind of a one-stop shop for campaigning, which is nice, but it's more expensive, and it is, I would say, less intuitive, can be a little clunky. So if you have someone who's pretty tech savvy and you have the extra resources, then sure, Nation Builder can be good, especially if you're doing it as part of a bigger use case for your entire campaign. But MailChimp is great for any EDA, especially a lower resourced EDA, to get started with email campaign. Hits every need that you have, and they keep it updated, and there's plenty of support and guidance and documentation. Cool. I think I want to actually pause there and see if there's any questions now. Let's see. There's a form to fill out. I'm checking the chat. If anyone has questions, feel free to either wave or raise your hand or just say it in the chat. Yeah, I see a question from Bobby. I think you're muted, Bobby.
There.
Perfect.
So I was too busy taking off putting my camera on. This is lovely. I've been involved since the early 90s. I've been very, written a lot of emails. And so I'm thinking, this is great. What am I going to learn? Well, first of all, I send emails. I don't use MailChimp, but we have people in our organization that do. So I'm learning some technical stuff, which I really appreciate. And I'm learning just some really good stuff. So I want to thank you. This is great. So my question is about, you said, Tim, if you're using supporting links, and then you said, make sure something, and I need you to repeat that for me, please.
Totally, sure. So if you're using supporting links, you want to make sure that those links open in a new window.
In a new window.
Yes, yeah. So when you create a link in MailChimp or most platforms, there'll be an option to set the target.
Yeah.
So you want the target to be a new window. Otherwise, it will take them out of the window they're in and use that window to open the link. And since a lot of people read their email in a browser, like they're in Gmail, it'll take them out of their browser. So you want to make sure it goes to a new window instead, or a new tab.
Exactly. You mentioned about using merge tags, and merging I know about, of course, it's a wonderful tool. And you obviously suggested, you put the person's name in, that makes it personal and lovely. And you said something about you could also merge or use this for subject lines. Did I get that right?
That's right.
Maybe, could you explain that again?
Sure. Yeah, you can put a merge tag right in the subject line. So an example we've done at Lead Now is we've used, like first name versus Doug Ford. And that'll pull their first name from the record. So in my case, it'd be Tim versus Doug Ford. And that subject line is eye-catching because I see my own name there and I see Doug Ford's name, which just gets my attention. And so that helps to drive up the open rate on those.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, no worries. Any other questions? Hi, Jay, welcome. Emily?
A couple questions. One of them about A/B testing your subject lines. How do you divide up your list to kind of test it out?
Yeah, so you do need a fair number of people to get a statistically valid test. Typically what we do is we'll do a test of 5,000. And so it'll be half 2,500 we'll get each. You may do more, but we usually do about 2,500. If we're going to test 3, then we'll do 7,500 total, for example. There are calculators online where you can check and see if the results are statistically valid or just chance, because they might just be, random chance. And usually, if there's like a big difference, then that's better to go with. It's worth noting that as you're doing that kind of testing, like the subject line can drive the open rate, but we find that it does not have much impact on the ultimate conversion rate usually. So that is determined by the content of the email and the nature of the landing page where they go when they take the action. So there's a whole flow that usually we go through where when we're sending an email, we write the email, we get it all crafted, then we also craft a landing page for the action we're asking them to take, whether it's a donation or a call or an email, whatever it is. Create a landing page for that, which captures the basics of the theory of change, why we're asking them to take action, one last push on that, and then clearly explains how to take the action now that they're on the page to do it. Whether it's, click the button or fill out the form at right. Just very clearly delineate what it is we're asking them to do and how they can do it to make sure they have that uptake. And also like to make sure that there is an option there where they know how to get help if they struggle with it, if it doesn't work, or if tech glitches, or if they just can't figure it out, they know how to reach us and get assistance.
Cool. And one more question. When we're talking about links in an email, does including, so like hyperlink text won't work. That also, I assume, like applies for like a button, like if you're using one of MailChimp's buttons, like you need a nakedr link than that, right?
Yes, that's right. If as far as the accessibility, that's right. The buttons won't be read out for them for the link. That's right. Yeah, I like the buttons. They are very visible, and if for people who are accessing it that way, and they, it's nice to have like a bright red or bright orange button there sticking out at you, and it's also very clear then for people who are opening the email and they just want to get right to it. They go, oh, there's the button, and go. So it is nice. Another thing we like to do is we set up what we call a CTA box, and so in MailChimp or pretty much any email platform that's more advanced than just basic Gmail, you have an option to do a little bit of coding. Now, I don't expect anybody to have to learn HTML or anything, but you can do what I do, which is literally just Google it. Like, I want to make this thing, and somebody's already done the coding. So you can just copy paste, change a few words, and you've got it. So we use something called a CTA box. We call it a CTA box, which stands for call to action. And it just puts a little box in the top corner of the email that summarizes. We distill down the theory of change to like one sentence, and then the call to action to one sentence. So you got two sentences in there and a little photo and a link. So it's right at the top. And we have found that does generate more conversions when you use that.
And sorry, follow-up question. You put that like kind of at the top, just top of the email.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. There's a lot of customizability that you can use in your emails if you want to get a little more advanced, because you can do coding in the HTML one. It's worth noting that although there's not many left, there are some people who do not use HTML compatible email readings programs. So it will allow you to also set what's called a text-based version of your email. And it is worth doing that because there are some people who still don't access the HTML or have it turned off for a variety of reasons. Bobby, you have your hand up. Is it still up, or did you have another question?
No, I don't have another question. I forgot to put my hand down. There, I'm going to do it right now. Thank you.
No worries. Just checking. Cool. Great. So I think I do want to share a little bit about getting started on creating an email strategy. So when I got to Etobicoke Lakeshore and when I became one of the co-presidents, we didn't have like an email strategy, but we did have an email account. And we wanted to start to build on that. And so we made the email part of our campaigning, a big part of all of our elements of campaigning. So whenever we do an electoral campaign, we make gathering emails part of that. When people want to take a sign, we ask them for an email when they fill out a sign slip. When people confirm as a 1, we always ask them like, hey, do you want to be part of this campaign? Just keep up to date on what we're doing with an email. We try and gather that information. We also do a lot of in between elections campaigning on different local issues. And we always make the email part of that campaign ask. A lot of petition gathering where we ask people for their emails. And then we follow up with them about those campaigns. And that it is worthwhile when you gather people's information through, for example, petition, to make sure that the next email they get is not an unrelated fundraiser, for example. You want to make sure that you are warming them up to being on your list. And so we try and make sure that we hold them out of other emails, and that the next email that people come in from a petition get is on that campaign. And the easiest way to do this without having to do anything fancy technically is just to not send a lot of emails and to do your campaigns on tight timelines and tight arcs. So we did a one on the concrete plant down the street. So we set up a petition online, mobilized a bunch of people, got a few hundred signatures. When we followed up, it was to invite those people to take the next action on that campaign, which was to complain to the mayor and to Councillor Grimes. And so that was their immediate follow-up. Like, oh yes, I gave them my email address and they used it to give me value, to give me a way to be part of this movement, to get the action that we want. From there, we can then start to include them on other emails and then get them merged into the wider audience. But we still have that tag associated, so we know in future if we have other related issues that we want to campaign on or other steps in that campaign, we know to start with them. Jay, I see your hand up.
Forgive the way I'm going to explain this, but there's been a couple of things I've signed where it's a website that you just fill in a couple of bits of information and it sends an email to whoever you've set it up to. Is that, is it redundant to have an email that points people to that? Because I've seen that tactic used where it's, hey, come check out this, and then the website has the information and the box to fill out and hit send.
Not redundant at all. That's a great move. And we definitely do that. The value there is that it is very simple for people to engage with that sort of thing. You can send an email to 1,000 people, and if all they have to do is click 2 buttons, where they click the link to go to that page and then click another button to send an email, many more of them will do it than if they have to handcraft an email themselves. The trade-off, of course, is that if an MP gets 100 emails and they're all exactly the same, they may say, well, this isn't as important. So the best versions of that allow people to modify it and create their own if they like, but have a default one available to them if they don't like, so you're getting kind of a mixable. But you can actually fudge that if you don't have that kind of technology. There's a couple ways. One, LeadNow actually does have a platform that allows you to set up that kind of tool for yourself, and that's free. But if you want to just do it yourself, you can use a link in MailChimp or any email platform called a mail to link. And instead of pointing to a website, that will point to an email address. So when you set up that link, if you do this in MailChimp, you'll select the kind of link, say mail to, put in the email address that you want it to go to, and you can type out the default subject line and default content of that email. And when people click that, it'll just pop up in their email provider, pre-written, ready to send. So you can kind of create that functionality for yourself as well. Cool. What's on the strategy stuff? Yeah. So we try to integrate the email stuff into our wider strategy. So we have these ongoing campaigns electorally, and in between elections, we do these petition campaigns where we integrate the emails there. We want to make sure that people know that it's us and not other branches of the NDP. So we try and make sure that we have a very distinctive format to our emails. I always sign them off as being from us, and we always try and clarify, like, things that we do are not necessarily related to what the party does, just so people understand that distinction and that we're building a relationship with them as Etobicoke Lakeshore NDP, which is, we're a part of the NDP for sure, but we're doing our own things. And part of the importance of that is that people don't always know that when they donate to the NDP, generally, none of that comes to us. And that's fine. The NDP has to raise their money too, but so do we. So by setting that distinction, making that clear in our communications, when it does come time to fundraise for us, we can say, we don't get support from the central party. We depend on you. So this is your opportunity to give here, and all this money will stay right here in Etobicoke Lakeshore. So distinguishing yourself from the party and setting that distinctive voice and form to your emails is part of the strategy. I think that's the bulk of what I had. Are there any questions about the strategy or anything else? Emily.
Hi. So I'm not sure what Etobicoke Lakeshore, how you guys operate. We in Uni Rose have some crossover, like we share a MailChimp account between provincial and federal. But we send out different emails. We have like different concerns and so forth. So what would you recommend for creating a distinct voice for each part of the writing association? Even though we like our newsletter is joint, but obviously I have to send federal emails sometimes. How do I distinguish myself?
That's a good question. I think so. For us, we are also joint. Typically, what we'll do is if it's a provincial action, we'll just change the logo from the provincial to the federal logo, vice versa, rather. So we have the two different logos at the top. Otherwise, for us at least, it's very, very similar in style and form. But I think that's likely to change as we've grown. I think you all have quite a large writing association, is my understanding. So I think it makes sense to have a distinctive voice for the two. Because you have quite a bit going on, and you have an elected MPP, which is exciting too. So yeah, I think that makes sense to have a distinctive voice between the two branches there.
Cool. Interesting.
Yeah.
Cool.
And we have learned. So I guess there's a few extra tricks. I guess we'll talk about a few things we've learned. At least in our experience, the length of the email kind of doesn't matter. As long as you're following that format where you've got the first bit gets all the key points in that first couple paragraphs, and then the next bit is the explanatory stuff, you can go on at great length if you like in that extra bit. And people do read it. And the people who don't want to read it, they've got the gist of it out the first bit anyway. So we have found that it's fine to have quite a bit of length. People also ask, like, how many emails should you send? We typically keep it to one a day, no more. At most, it can be quite a bit less. In Etobicoke Lakeshore, we do try and make sure there's at least one a month that everyone gets. And again, if you're segmenting, some people may get some people may get another. But yeah, try and keep it to no more than one a day, no fewer than one a month is a pretty good average guideline. Jay, you got a question?
Is it true that if like you want to sell the urgency or importance of something, you send more emails, or is that kind of a anti-productive? Because the more emails I get from say a party asking me for money, the less I'm willing to do it, and I'm even look at that unsubscribe button a little harder. So my question is, how do you know what the balance is between like showing urgency in the amount of emails, or is it better to try and figure out how to show the emergency in the content of the email?
You've nailed it. I think that if you're using the frequency of your emails to demonstrate the urgency, it's because you've failed to do so in the content of your emails. And the better approach is to do it with the content, if you can. And you almost always can. If you are struggling to explain the urgency, it may be because there isn't a lot of urgency, and that may indicate a problem with your theory of change. So if there is an opportunity to make a difference, then there's urgency to take action, so you don't miss that opportunity. If you don't have urgency around not missing the opportunity, it might mean there's no opportunity, and you might want to rethink your strategy. So I would generally avoid flooding any email inboxes. I know there's like the end of the year, everyone like floods out the inboxes because there's the last chance to donate to get your tax credits, all that stuff. But even there, like we don't do more than one a day. There, the NDP certainly does, but we don't do that. And I don't find that that's particularly great for list health to be, if you get 5 emails, the response you have is very common and very understandable. It's, that isn't really what you signed up for. What are you, the user, getting out of that? If I was going to donate on December 31st, I'm going to do it at 10 a.m. or I'm going to do it at 10 p.m., but it doesn't matter how many emails I get, I'm going to make that decision regardless. So that was a good question, and you've exactly got the insight right on that. One thing that we do is we will do what's called a kicker. So if you send out an email, you're asking people to take an action, some percentage of them take the action. Maybe a few days later, we'll send what's called a kicker, which will reply to that same email. So it's in a thread, and add a little more to the top, a little context, like, hey, just making sure you didn't miss this. I'm sure you've seen this in your inbox before. Don't miss your chance to be part of this. The deadline is tomorrow, or whatever your urgency is. Just a quick paragraph or two at most, just getting it back to the top of the inbox for them. And you want to exclude everyone who took the action already, which is a very easy segmenting thing to do if you're segmenting properly. And then it's everybody else who got the first email but didn't take the action yet. It's just a reminder. And that's just a nice way to get those people who, and we've all done this, saw it, we're like, yeah, I want to do that, but I don't want to do it right now. And then they forget about it. And that's totally normal. So it's just one more chance to get those folks. And we find that picks up the uptake. One other thing that you've raised for me, Jay, is you mentioned unsubscribing. And unsubscribing is a fact of life. Some amount of people are going to unsubscribe off of like basically every email you send, because for somebody that's the final straw. And maybe it's they signed up because of one particular campaign and that's all they wanted. Maybe they're no longer particularly interested. Maybe it's just a bad day, whatever the reason. You're going to find a certain amount of that. So don't stress too much about the unsubscribes. You do want to make sure that you are bringing in new people, so you're not whittling down your list all the time. You will find higher unsubscribes typically off of donation asks, which makes sense. But don't fear them, just be aware of them. And if you do notice that the unsubscribe rate is increasing over particular emails, you want to pay attention to that and try and assess what's causing that. If it's a change in your tone, if it's the subject matter, whatever it may be, you just want to check into that and be aware of it. We do monitor the unsubscribe rate. We monitor the new join rate, and just keep an eye on that balance to make sure that it's not going too far downwards in times where we're not planning on it to do that. We know that like when it's a big fundraiser, you're going to see a bit of a downward dip, and that's part of the deal. Cool. Emily.
I have a few more questions. If anyone else has any other questions, please jump in. In terms of, I was wondering, could you give us an example of a theory of change?
Yeah. So your basic formula for a theory of change is you want to say, if X happens, then Y can happen. So a good theory of change that we use a lot is, we've got a petition up. You say, we'll explain, or actually, I'll give you the click to call tool we use a lot because I love this. We know that phone calls are powerful, that MPPs or MPs have to listen to phone calls. They track the number of phone calls they get. So if, we're going to send this email to 10,000 people, if 1,000 of those people make the call, we're going to flood their inboxes, and that's a message that they cannot ignore. So then they'll know that they have to take action on this issue. You want a clear connection between the specific action you're asking them to take and the impact it's going to make. And we try and be very careful to not overpromise here. I don't want to say, if 1,000 of you call, we're going to get this law. That's something I can't promise and deliver on. But what I can say is I know that MPs track the number of calls they get. So if 1,000 of you call, they're going to know. They're going to get that message. You're going to be heard. And that's going to influence their decision making. And it's nice to show other metrics in the past. Like if you've won a campaign after like a few hundred calls, you say, well, last time we got this. So you can cite other examples, but it's that if this, then this formulation that describes an effective theory of change.
That's awesome. And then just in terms of building a list from, as you were saying at the top, petitions and other actions like that, just a very technical, like on a technical level in Etobicoke Lakeshore, how are you, I guess you're using some kind of like a landing page or like a landing platform to track and like capture those emails and then just like uploading them into MailChimp. And that's like how you get most of your, it's just through like, and through Populous and stuff like that. It's just like imports into MailChimp.
That's exactly right. So we use Action Network for our landing pages. And the reason we do that is because when we set this system up, MailChimp did not have tags, and Action Network did. So I wanted to use tags, and so we use Action Network. What I would like to do before I retire from my president's role is to switch us to MailChimp across the board, because now it does have tags and landing pages. But you could just as easily use like a Google form if you wanted, or an Airtable or something. There's lots of ways to do it, as long as you're then putting that information into MailChimp and making sure you have a track on how they come in. But it's nice to automate it. So the way we have it set up with the EL is we have an Action Network form. There's a tag associated with the action. So it'll say like, this is the campaign that this petition is associated with. When they sign it, we know they've signed this petition. And then it'll say, if it's like a climate change petition, it'll say, okay, great, then this is also climate. So we know that they are a climate voter as well, or at least interested in this climate issue. And we can build a sense of their interest there. We'll also do things like volunteer, and then we'll use a year. So we know what year they're volunteering in, because if someone says volunteer, but they're from 2017 and haven't done it since, maybe not a hot lead for the next election. But we also have it set up so that when they check the volunteer box, an email is sent right to my inbox right away, and I can follow up with them and say, hey, I saw you want to volunteer. Let's do it. We've got lots to do. And they get welcomed right away on them. And then they get added to the email inbox, or email list rather. Yeah. Jay?
This is probably a niche question, but I'm in the largest Francophone riding outside of Quebec. And I've been wondering, is it better to do a campaign in English and a campaign in French? That way the members, even though they are potentially not bilingual, it's still kind of a double hit, but without, I don't know how to say this, like without annoying, because the English members aren't going to open a French titled email from us. Do you get what I'm asking? Is it like, hey, we can use this as a double whammy to drive the point home? Or is it better to do bilingual communication and not flood people?
So let me make sure I understand. You're asking, is it better to do two different emails, one English and one French, versus like an email that is both? Is that right?
Yes, because in many of the things that I've done within my writing, I've noticed that even for me, to scroll down past a very long email to get to the English part is something that I don't know why it's not a lot of work. It's a mental thing that I've noticed that I do, is if it's all the way at the bottom, I'm more likely not to go all the way to the bottom and so on. So
Totally.
It's kind of a two for, is it better to get the free double whammy or the excuse to have the two emails about the same subject? Or is that still going to be an overwhelming amount of emails?
No, I think in the short term, you're absolutely right that it's better to have the two distinct ones. I don't know what your capacity is for translation and all that too, but all other things being equal, I think it does make sense to have the two, and then people will open the one that most applies to them. You're not alone. People will be less likely to scroll all the way down, to give up. People's attention is very short, and that's not a moral judgment at all. It's just the way that we're built, and we live in this highly demanding attention economy right now. So I think that makes sense. In the long run, I think it makes a lot of sense to be tracking who engages with these emails. And so the people who open and read and click on the French email, you should add to a French list. And over time, begin to build up a sense of who's speaking English and who's speaking French in your list and who's engaging with that content, so that you can target it more precisely in the future. Cool. Any other questions? Great.
You talked about, sorry, one more thing.
Yeah.
You talked about the kind of tracking your join rate. And so obviously you get like a lot of, kind of like bulk imports from actions and so forth. Do you find that people join based on like your own Etobicoke Lakeshore like landing page, like a sign up for our newsletter thing? Like, is that how you get some independent joins?
Yeah, yep, we have that sign up there. And that has the option to join in just the mailing list, or if they want to volunteer or commit to taking a sign in the next election, those are just checkboxes in there, and each checkbox just adds a different tag so that they're all sorted automatically on that.
Cool. Do you find like how many per month do you get from that? Do
3 or 4.
Cool.
Yep.
Do we have any other questions that are percolating at the moment? Okay, very cool. Tim, thank you so much for this incredible learning experience. I have several pages of notes. This has been invaluable. Thank you for joining us this evening. Thanks for this download of knowledge. Do you have any final remarks for us?
I will say, first off, thanks for inviting me. I really enjoyed it. I've done a lot of this now, and it's been such a linchpin of our success in Etobicoke Lakeshore. The thing to take away from this all is just to remember that it is a relationship building experience, as all organizing is. And email is so valuable because it's not very intrusive, but it's intrusive enough that people notice it. So you can email regularly, you're not bothering them like with a phone call or anything, but you're just staying in their minds and in their lives, and keep that conversation going, keep the dialogue going. It's quite, I'm going to use the word sticky because it's a way to continue to be growing your network in the riding, and continue to be building your movement in the riding. And it's such an effective way to do that, and such a low cost. I can't recommend it enough. If you're not doing email, you got to be doing email.
I want to thank you very much again. That was excellent. Really, really, really well done, and very energizing. Making something that might seem like drudgery, it's not. It's totally not, because we know how effective it is and that we need to do it. So I'm going to write up some notes. I'm with the Cambridge Riding Association. I work closely with Kitchener, South Hespeler, and Guelph. So I'll share my notes. So again, I want to thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Glad to do it. Anytime. And if you ever have questions in the future, I'm in the new demo chat Slack. I'm around, and always happy to answer questions when I can.
Okay, thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks so much, Bobby. Very well said. Very energizing. Okay, so we're finished for the night, folks. Thanks again for joining us, and thank you, Tim. Thank you so much. Bye,
Thanks, everyone.
everybody.
Keep up the great work. Bye now.